Welcome to the Fight with Depression podcast, the podcast for people who want to improve their mental health. My name is Christopher Boussard, and for this episode today, we're going to be taking a deeper look into last episode, which was episode 20 on doing the right thing, and we're just going to take a deeper look into what it really means to do the right thing. And I'm going to be completely honest with you all. I'm really not in a great place myself today and lately. And I thought that this was going to be a good episode to just kind of take a deeper look, because a lot of that is a result of people not doing the right thing, not standing up and doing what they should do. And, unfortunately, I've kind of been letting that get to me. But I've seen my friends, I've seen some other people who are also having to kind of deal with other people who just aren't doing what they should be doing and everything. And unfortunately for them and everybody, it's impacting our mental health collectively. I've seen several people lately and talked to several people that it's overwhelming, and it's just getting them down, and it's getting me down for other people in my life that are kind of not standing up and doing what they should. And it's just impacting our mental health, and just felt it would be good to revisit that last episode. So just a quick update too. I think one thing that's kind of been overwhelming me, I've scheduled a tentative surgery date for my back for this injury I've been dealing with. It's been over 3.5 months now. So hopefully that's going to be good. I'm just hope and pray that everything goes well. So anyway, let's get into it. So last episode we talked about doing the right thing and doing what's right by you, and is that the right thing to do? We can do what's right by us, but is that what is right and what is right by somebody else? And we can take advantage of people. And I think we're at a point where it seems like we don't have consequences for our actions. We take advantage of people, or somebody can take advantage of somebody, and we can say whatever we want, we can do whatever we want, and we can get away with it because there aren't those consequences that we can sometimes see, from like when I was a kid and you did the wrong thing, or you did something that affected somebody else, and you had those consequences for it. And I think you're a lot more careful about what you say and what you do when you run the risk of getting punched in the face for what you say and what you do. And a lot of that now I've talked about is, we hide behind our computers, we hide behind our comments on social media or whatever it is. And we don't have that face-to-face interaction, so we don't see what's actually happening, and we don't have that consideration of, well, am I doing the wrong thing, and am I going to have the consequences for that? And I think the consequences now are not necessarily am I doing the right thing or not, but the consequences are, am I doing the popular thing? If I post something on social media, or if I comment on something, if I say something, is that going to be the popular thing to do? It's not what's right. It's what's popular and what's going to get me canceled, quote unquote, for saying something or doing something. If I say this, am I going to look bad? Not is it the right thing to say and do, but how am I going to be perceived for doing it? We don't want to be ridiculed or criticized, but it's not the same thing as, I've got to do what's right, or I'm going to get punched in the face. It's, am I going to say the right thing that people think is popular, or get criticized online, or, like I said, get canceled? Those are our considerations. But what I want to talk about in this episode is not those things that we do behind the computer or anything like that. It's how do we put that into our real lives? we make excuses for not doing the right thing, and we blame others. And really, what I want to do is just kind of talk about some things, some real life stories about doing the right thing and not doing the right thing. And we can say that this is part of our culture now. We're so hurried, and I talked about that last episode. We're so hurried that we can't be bothered to do the right thing. But when I was a kid, man, I was in probably first grade, which would have put my older brother in third grade. We were driving with my dad. Well, we were riding with him in the car, and he had separated his shoulder or dislocated his shoulder, something like that. So he was in a sling, and my parents actually switched cars because my dad drove a manual transmission, my mom drove an automatic, and of course, with my dad's arm in a sling, he couldn't shift gears and everything. So they switched cars. We were driving, and he got a flat tire, and we were sitting on the side of the road. Like I said, if my brother and I were young, and we weren't going to do much to help out. It's not a Christmas Story kind of thing. But so he was out on the side of the road. I don't want to tell you how long ago this was, that's going to completely age me. But I will say that this was when the gas choices were either regular or unleaded, if that's gonna give you any reference there. So it's not a new thing. And we were sitting there, and all these cars driving by. My dad's obviously struggling to get the car, up on the jack and take the tire off. And I remember we were watching, and I think it was a highway. And I remember watching the cars going by, and there was a police car that drove by and didn't bother to stop. And I just remember that vividly, that it's who we are and what we do, that we should, regardless of our rank or position or whatever, police officer or not, all these people driving by, but nobody stopped. And I kind of started thinking about this a while ago, and I was listening to a few of Jocko's podcasts and thought about it. And I was driving home from work one morning, and it was not a busy road at all. There was only a few cars driving by. I like to take the scenic route home, so I take the county roads and everything. And I pulled up. There's just short of a stop sign, and there's a gentleman standing out by his minivan, and the car had temporary tags on it. And he was standing out there, and I saw that his family was in the car. I pulled over in front of him and was talking to him. And, he's like, yeah, I just bought this car. Tires were bald. He said, I've got to take it back to the dealer because, it's not acceptable to have these bald tires. So I, checked it out, and I was like, yeah, they're definitely bald. He showed me the back passenger side tire, and he's like, yeah, this one's really giving me problems. I don't know what's going on. I asked him if he had a spare or anything. I was going to help him change it out at least so he could get somewhere. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't have one. But he said, yeah, I'm just going to kind of hobble down the road. And he's taking it to a tire shop. And I said, okay, sorry I couldn't do any more to help. He said, oh, thanks for stopping. Thanks for pulling over. He said, people just don't do that anymore. And it's like, yeah, unfortunately that's true. So I got in my truck and left, and I was driving home. I probably got most of the way home, and I thought about it, and I was like, man, I should have done more. Granted, I couldn't help him. I didn't have a tire on me that was gonna fix it or anything like that. But obviously, the van that he had was pretty run down. His wife and his young child were in the car. Just the state of the van was not great, and it looked like they were kind of struggling to get by. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I should have followed him. I should have followed him to the tire shop, and if he couldn't afford it, like I'm in a position right now where I could buy a couple tires for this guy to replace the rear tires or something. I could at least made sure that he made it to the shop. But I remember when I was in that similar position, Molly and I, when we got married for, when we first got married, we didn't have any money at all. We were struggling to get by. That, what, 5, 6 jobs between the two of us, just to get by. And this $15 an hour that people are making now, I think we were making half that maybe. And this is 16 years ago, but like I said, I know what it was like, and I think people are more likely to help other people when they can empathize with them, when they can put themselves in their situation, because I remember what it was like not having that money and going, man, we have car troubles, but I just can't afford to fix it. And it just kind of reminded me when I was in college, we had a church group that would go around, or that went around one Halloween, and we actually, as the kids in the area were trick or treating, we'd go up to the houses and we'd say, trick or canned goods. People would look at us weird and we'd say, yeah, we're collecting non-perishable items for the homeless shelter in town. And I had a backpack slung over my back. One of the guys had a backpacking backpack, and I used it as an excuse to get ready for football. I was like, I got to carry the weight and everything. So we threw all the canned goods in the backpack. But it was, I would say funny, but it was more, I think, sad than funny. We went to the better off neighborhoods. I'll say that. There's people with pools and had indoor outdoor pools, and this is not an area that is very hot. I'm going to say that. I had a coworker I worked with one time that she told me, she went to the same college, and she told me that they had canceled classes just because of how cold it was out there. So it wasn't warm, but these people still had pools, and we would go and ask them for any non-perishable items. And it was very typical in that area for people to come back to the door with, some canned peas or creamed corn or something that you could obviously tell was in the back of their cupboard, that they just kind of scrounged around and found anything that they hadn't eaten for probably a couple of years. But then we went to the, I'd say, less well-off areas, and some apartments that, it was obvious that people were in that same position I was talking about before, where you just didn't have very much money. And we kind of felt bad going to that area, but we thought, if they can afford anything, we'll just see if they want to give anything. We're not going to exclude, anybody. Obviously we didn't want to do that, but we went to those less fortunate areas, and there was several houses or apartments that they would, we'd come to, and we'd say we're collecting non-perishable items for the homeless shelter. And those people would come back with bags of, canned goods and, bags of ramen and everything. But it was interesting that the people who had less money were giving more than the people who could definitely afford it. And I think part of that is because when you're in that position, you know what it's like to be in want. You know what it's like to need things and not be able to afford that. So they're more likely to give what they have to somebody who can't afford it. And I just remember we came back to one of the girls' houses that was in the church group, and went into her living room and just unloaded all of our stuff. We had all these different groups that went out and unloaded all of our stuff, and we were just overwhelmed. But I think the majority of that came from people who just seemed like they couldn't afford it themselves. And like I said, we tend to make excuses, right? We see people who are trying to collect money on the street corners or whatever, and we judge them. We say, "Oh, I bet you they can afford it. I don't know why they're out there." And I definitely think we should use discrimination on who we give money and everything to. But I think a lot of the times, and we say, well, I don't want to judge people, I don't want to discriminate, but at the risk of being criticized for saying this, because I'm going to, because I think it's the right thing to say. We can often tell who needs a little extra. We can tell those people, but then we use those excuses as to, well, why should I give that to them? Because I don't think that they actually need it, because we're using somebody else that we have seen as an example, and so we just write everybody off. And Molly and I, it was Molly's idea many years ago. She made what she calls these homeless bags, and it's just bags of stuff that people need. And that was all brought about by asking people who worked at the Denver Rescue Mission and asking people who were homeless, like, what do you need in lieu of money that helps people get by? And homeless people and people, like I said, at Denver Rescue Mission have said, don't give money. They don't need money, but this is what they need. And we got, a list of some things, bottled water, chapstick in the winter, and, extra pairs of socks, and just stuff like that. Some granola bars. And we keep a couple of those in our cars and hand them out. And, like I said, you can sometimes judge who's going to actually need these things and who's not. And unfortunately, we've had some people that they're asking for food, and we say, okay, well, I've got a bag of food here. And they say, oh, I don't want that. Don't you have any money? Nope, sorry. We try to do the right thing, but we had some old neighbors, and they worked at McDonald's and gave us some coupons for free, I don't know, chicken nuggets or free ice cream, whatever it is, just a bunch of free items. And they said, yeah, put these in those bags or take them and hand them out. And Molly and I I think we took the kids. I think we had all three kids at that point. And we went to Starbucks, and we were coming out, and there was a younger couple, and they came out, and they were obviously in need. And they said, hey, they went into Starbucks to get some water, came out and said, hey, do you guys have any food? And we gave them a couple of those bags, and they were just so happy. Just so happy. And we kind of, we saw which direction they went, and they went into the McDonald's that was just right over by the Starbucks. And Molly's like, I'm going to go bring them some of these coupons. I'm going to bring them some of the McDonald's coupons. And she went in there, and they were sitting there eating the food out of the bags that we had given them. And so Molly went in, and she gave them these coupons for free food. And the young lady was, almost in tears. And she's like, oh, thank you very much. She said, I feel like I just won the lottery. So, I mean, we could have judged them and based on somebody else and said, oh, they're just asking for handouts. They just want money. But, they were in a bad position. Who knows what it was? They just couldn't afford food. Maybe it was the decision to, well, do we pay our rent, or do we pay or do we buy some food? Or, did they even have rent? Did they have a house? Were they living out of their car? Who knows? It's not up to me to decide. But when we, gave them those items, it made a bigger difference to them, I'm sure, than it made to us. But there was something special about knowing how much of an impact that we made on those people. And who knows if they remember or not, or maybe they're telling somebody else this story that, we were in this parking lot, and these people gave us a bunch of free food. I remember Molly and I broke down in Nebraska one time, one of the many times that we've broken down. And we were sitting there eating breakfast, trying to figure out what we were going to do, because it was a weekend and our car was towed to the shop, and we didn't know what we were going to do. And so we're sitting at breakfast, and there was a lady who worked there, and we got to talking with her, and she said, "Oh, here, take my car and go get some items you need, toothbrushes and all that stuff, because all of our stuff was in the car." She said, "Take my car. I get off work at, whatever, 5 o'clock. Just make sure you're back by then, and you know, get everything. Go to the store. Here's the location of the store and all this stuff. And here's my husband's phone number. He's home right now. If you need to call him, just let him know what's going on, and he'll take care of you." And we were just astonished that this lady let us borrow her car. And, that seems ridiculous now. This was, I don't know, not even 20 years ago. But it made such a huge difference that we tell that story all the time. And who knows if she even remembers it, right? But it's just those things that you can do. You can do the right thing. Or you can just make excuses not to. So I know I like to keep these podcasts to 20 minutes. I've got some other topics that I wanted to discuss that haven't even got there, because I've kind of went off of what I was originally planning on talking about. But those are the things that I'm talking about, right? Just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And you don't know whose life you're going to impact in a good way. But you also don't know whose life you're going to impact in a negative way by not doing the right thing. So anyway, just go out there, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So until next time, God bless.